Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's recap, we will be looking at an anime titled Mayoiga. In this anime, a busload of quirky people is on its way to Nanaki Village, an urban legend where people can reportedly start again and live their lives to perfection. While many people have different opinions about why the village cannot be discovered on any map, or why even the police are unable to determine its position, they all look forward to their new life and what awaits them once they arrive. After a few misadventures, they finally get to Nanaki Village, only to find it utterly abandoned. Based on the level of decay, it has been vacant for at least a year. However, secrets are soon revealed when a portion of the gang goes missing while exploring the settlement, and in the commotion, they discover bloody claw prints in a forest. Will they ever be able to uncover the truth about this buried community as distrust and infighting spread? I'm sure that at this point you will want to know how everything plays out, right? Then, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. The opening scene features a bus filled with passengers traveling at night to a specific location. The person in charge of the trip is no other than Dahara, an adult in his early 20s. He introduces himself to the passengers and applauds them for joining the First Life Do-Over tour. The purpose of the trip is for the passengers involved to have a new life different from the ones they left behind. Also, the passengers involved feature young teenagers as well as adults in their early 20s of both genders. Dahara, the organizer, hands the microphone to the passengers so that they can introduce themselves one by one. The first person to take the mic is none other than a guy named Mikaji Yura, who worked in a trading company. He introduces himself beginning with his name and then adds that he is an elite. Also, he states that he was supposed to inherit his family business, get married, settle down, and so on. But he joined the trip because his chosen path was not appealing to him. After he is done introducing himself, he passes the mic to the other passengers as instructed by Dahara. One person who catches attention is a guy named Hayato, who claims he joined the trip because the destination, Nanaki Village, intrigues him. Another person is a guy named Valkana, who after introducing himself, places himself responsible for controlling the affairs of the passengers. The way he says this raises the eyebrows of many, but Dahara interrupts him, telling him to pass the mic to the next person. Finally, the last person to introduce herself is a girl named Love Pawn, who joined the trip because she wants to protect her identity. After she is done introducing herself, Dahara confirms the passengers list and then proceeds to explain the overall tour. Here he speaks about the destination, which is Nanaki Village, as mentioned by Hayato earlier. According to his online source, Nanaki Village is rumored not to exist on the map. People associated with the village end up missing, and it is often covered up as some spirited away phenomenon. Dahara explains that the missing people, as said earlier, have not. Instead, they have created new lives for themselves free from the rules and constraints of modern society. While reading from a different online source, Dahara emphasizes that the police have never managed to locate Nanaki Village, but an ally has helped to locate it. As he says this, the majority of the passengers on the bus cheer up because they are excited to start new lives in a new settlement that cannot be found. Sitting beside Hiedo is a teenage boy named Mitsumune, who is excited about the trip. Hiedo, on the other hand, is bothered by the fact that the police cannot locate their destination, but Mitsumune tries to explain the idea behind the village's mystery. While speaking, he catches the attention of a lady named Mai and some other ladies who smile at him for being so knowledgeable. However, Mikaj opposes Mitsumune's theory, providing valid reasons that Mitsumune's source is inaccurate. Soon, other passengers begin to share their ideas about Nanaki Village, leaving Mitsumune stunned because he never expected that the passengers would be so knowledgeable. Moving on, the passengers begin singing a song while on the way to their destination, but a few passengers like Valkana, Mikage, and Hayato are noticeably quiet. While Mitsumune sings, Hayato gets curious and questions him on how he knows the song, but he replies by saying that the song is popular. Just behind Mitsumune is a girl named Masaki crying while the song is being sung. At a point, the driver makes a stop for the passengers to shop for supplies to aid their trip. Minutes later, Hayato sits beside a vending machine holding a conversation with Mitsumune. They converse because Hayato does not believe in the mysteries of Nanaki as outlined by Dahara earlier. He restates his reason, which is to make sure that the rumors of the village are false. Mitsumune, upon hearing this, tells Hayato to lower his voice because other passengers, including himself, believe the rumors of Nanaki Village to be true. Towards the end of their conversation, Mitsumune takes out his phone to see if his parents called him. While swiping through his notifications, he sees that his mom has called him several times, leaving messages behind. Clearly, his mom has no idea that he ditched town and is on his way to start a new life elsewhere. After Mitsumune is done checking his phone, he tells Hayato that he is serious about starting a new life because he wants his life to be his. In the public restroom, Mai Mai converses with a girl named Puko about her experience with Mitsumune. Based on Mai's first encounter with Mitsumune earlier, Puko realized that Mitsumune does not have enough experience with girls. She says this to Mai and asks her if she likes him, but she replies by saying no. Her response makes Puko add Mitsumune to her list of potential boyfriends. At the same time, Mitsumune tries to access a vending machine, but he sees Masaki looking all sad and moody. He confronts her to find out what's up, but Masaki gives off some weird excuses. Also, the way she acts is quite weird, because she is the type to overthink things and anticipate the future. When Mitsumune speaks about the time she was crying on the bus, she interrupts him saying that she cried because of the song. According to her, the hippopotamus in the song died, which is the reason she cried. Minutes later, Mitsumune heads off to the bus to get drugs for her because she got car sick. While on the bus, he soliloquizes and catches the attention of a girl named Lion. After Lion introduces herself to Mitsumune, she declines to state her reason for joining the tour. Her short conversation with Mitsumune comes to an end, and Mitsumune hurries out of the bus to go meet up with Masaki. After some time, the tour members return to the bus to continue their journey to Nanaki Village. While en route to their destination, they play a game of words where each participating passenger says a related word when it gets to his or her turn. When it is time for Mitsumune to speak, he goes off point, and as such, judgment is passed for him to read his suicide note. The fact that he has to read out his suicide note shocks him, but he does it anyway since he has no choice. The way the suicide note is structured leaves the passengers laughing when they hear it. Amid the laughter, the driver interrupts the passengers and begins to speak about how absurd their desires are. He assumes that his passengers are young and they know nothing about life, so they should have no reason to run away or start a new one. The way he speaks pissed Valkana off, and as a result, Valkana warns him to shut up and drive. On the other hand, the driver does not process this well. Rather, he speeds up the vehicle, remembering all the bad things that have happened to him in his life, beginning from the part where he cannot afford to have quality meals or even take proper care of his family. His reckless driving scares the passengers because he drives as if he wants to kill everyone. Amid the chaos, a guy named Jack gets up from his seat and heads to give the driver some beating. He lands a nasty punch on the driver, which makes him lose concentration on the road. Misaki sees this and moves in to prevent the driver and Jack from fighting, but she throws up on the driver when she gets to him. In the end, the bus stops, and she apologizes to the driver for her actions. When she gets off the bus, she weeps, but Mitsumune consoles her saying that everything will be alright. There, he reveals his name to her and she replies, saying that she likes it. The fact that she likes the name makes Mitsumune weep at the spot. Moments later, some passengers stand a few meters away from the bus and they hear music coming from an unidentified source. Soon, other passengers get attracted to the music, but they wonder about its source. As the fog clears out, a lady walks out singing along to the music playing in the background. Her presence intrigues the passengers, and Dahara hugs her immediately. He notices that she has arrived. After hugging her, he introduces her as Koharun, who is studying folklore as a university student, and also the person who told him about Nanaki Village. On the other hand, Valkana heads out of the crowd thinking that Koharun wants to take charge of the passengers. As a result, he behaves rudely to her and insults her appearance before heading back to the crowd. An hour before dawn, Dahara and the others proceed on their journey to Nanaki Village. The driver drives the bus to a point after a bridge where he suggests that he cannot go further. Valkana stares beyond their current position and tells the driver to continue driving, even though it is not safe. The driver proceeds with the trip as directed by Valkana, carefully steering through the bumpy terrain of the woods. Even as he tries his best to stay on track, the bus slopes off into a shallow ditch, ending their trips temporarily. After the crash, some of the male passengers try to push the bus back up the ditch, but they fail because of how steep the slope is. The driver yells at the guys, telling them to push, but Valkana interrupts him, giving the impression that the passengers owe him nothing. A guy named Yatsen agrees with Valaka's mindset, and as such, the driver is left shocked. However, some female passengers spoke up about the fact that the driver warned that he couldn't go further earlier. One of them suggests that they cannot leave the driver behind, but Yutsen does not care what happens to the driver because he is going off to start a new life. The heated argument makes the driver head out of his bus and hold Dahara since he is the organizer of the trip. The way Dahara speaks to him makes matters worse because he does not want to help solve the problem at hand. Finally, Makaji comes up with a proposal where all the passengers are to give their money to the driver since cash will be worthless in Nanaki Village. Most of the passengers agree to Makaji's idea, and in turn, they submit their wallets for the driver. Before the passengers passengers leave, Mike threatens the driver, saying that if he speaks about Nanaki Village, he will frame him. In the absence of the passengers, the driver sits alone in his bus, pissed about the fact that he was humiliated in front of young adults. While going through the wallets, he hears some footsteps that catch his attention. When he turns around to look outside, what he sees shocks him. In the meantime, the passengers walk in single file heading to Nanaki Village as directed by Koharun. Mitsumune walks beside Hiato, but when he sees Misaki, he tries to meet up with her. Unfortunately, Hiato stops him and then questions him if he has fallen for Misaki already. In Mitsumuni's defense, he states that he feels Misaki gets him to an extent. Hiato does not believe that this is the case, but he walks away after Mitsumune disagrees with him once more. Lion, who walks behind Mitsumune, advances after Hiato leaves. She thinks that Mitsumune is having issues with Hiato, but also thinks that they are dating too. When she says this to Mitsumune, he debunks the idea, stating that he is just on the same tour with Hiato. When asked if Hiato convinced him to join the trip, he replies saying that he is the one that drags Hayato into things. Sometime in the past, Mitsumune was picked on by some of his classmates for being the smartest student. At that time, Hayato chased the bullies away and promised to always protect Mitsumune. In the present, Mitsumune explains that since high school, Hayato has always had his back, adding that Hayato gets mad whenever he is about to do something wrong. Towards the end of his conversation with Lion, a girl screams in such a way that catches his attention. The girl screamed because she saw something in the woods that resembled a bear. One of the passengers shines his flashlight into the woods only to see a large footprint that might belong to a bear or monster. The sight of the footprint frightens the passengers, but Dahara suggests that they keep moving to their destination. While everyone proceeds on the journey to their destination, Mitsumune turns around to speak to Misaki only to see that she is conversing with someone else. As a result, he continues walking and then begins a brief conversation with a girl named Nanko. In a short while, Mitsumune and the others arrive at Nanaki Village. Since it is their first time there, Koharun takes out her map to confirm if the said location is Nanaki Village. After comparing the landmarks, she finds out that the description is accurate. With this knowledge, Dahara announces to the others that they have arrived at Nanaki Village, and they all cheer happily. As the day becomes brighter, everyone gathers in front of the village to check out its buildings. Out of excitement, Mitsumune hurries to enter one of the buildings, but Dahara obstructs him, saying that he should greet the residents first. Mikaj and the others break off into groups to check out the buildings, only to find out that there is no one in the village. At some point, Yuno, who is experienced in home cleaning, checks out the amount of dust in one of the buildings. From her observation, she states that the village has been abandoned for at least a year. This alone raises curiosity in everyone, as they wonder where the original occupants of the village are. Some members of the tour begin to bring forward theories that explain the state of the village, but for some reason, Lion suggests that the villagers might be dead. The way she says this frightens some of the tour members, but one of them, named Wankoro, agrees with Lion. He explains that the village might have been wiped out by a minor contagious disease, coupled with the fact that the village is far removed from society. Also, another tour member named Lovepon believes that the villagers might have been executed for some crime. This statement alone leaves some of the other tour members shocked. In the end, Dahara suggests that they all break up into groups and explore the entire village. At first, Mitsumune wanted to join Misaki, but Mai Mai and Puko insisted that he join them. During the exploration, a guy named Hyuketsu confronts Jack, saying that he is a copycat. This is because their name in Japanese is quite familiar, and also the fact that they have similar personalities, according to Hyuketsu. While he warns Jack about the matter, Jack listens to him with a dead look on his face, but says nothing. Later that day, Valakana's search group checks out an abandoned barn and proceeds inside to see if anything lies within. At the entrance, a guy named Yotsun takes Misaki away from the building against her wish. The driver makes his way to Nanaki Village, and his presence shocks the tour members because they thought he would be long gone. The driver's reason for showing up is because he is an adult and he would want to watch over the kids. However, Lovepon does not like the fact that he is there, and as such, she suggests that he be executed, but a girl named Nana interrupts her, saying that she should be shut. Also, Nanko, who is a detective, gets curious and questions Dahara and Koharun about the mysterious features of the village, especially the part where it was only them that were able to find the village above everyone who looked. In Koharun's defense, she states that she received the location of the village from an email after months of searching for the place. According to her, the email contained detailed instructions about how to get to Nanaki Village, but she could not figure out who the sender was. Her explanation does not sit well with Mikaj, and as such he lashes out on her in disbelief. In the meantime, Valkana and his group meet up with the others, panting as a result of running a long distance. At first, Dahara assumes that they are now complete, but Valkana contradicts him, saying that Misaki and Yotsun are missing. The others upon hearing this look stunned as they wonder how both persons went missing just like that. While the others wonder how Yotsun and Masaki vanished, a guy named Toriyasu assumes that Yotsun was hitting on Masaki. This alone leaves the others speechless, but Mikage proceeds to analyze his current situation. The fact that Koharun confirmed that she got the village's location from an unidentified sender makes him assume that the village might be a dangerous place. At some point, they all agree to break off and find the missing persons in different parts of the village. While in search of the missing persons, Puko yells in such a way that draws the attention of the other tour members. When the other tour members get to her position, she points in the direction of a tree with claw marks and blood on it. The sight of this frightens Naana and the others, and as such, they assume that the claw mark might be a result of a bear. Soon, they all hear a loud noise from the woods that leaves them terrified. The last person to flee is Mitsumune, who freaks out at the sight of a large eye in the woods. When he gets himself back, he sees Masaki sitting alone, terrified at the back of a tree. Later that afternoon, Masaki appears before some of the tour members and explains what happened to her and Yotsun. She states what happened initially, adding a part where Yotsun went off to the woods to check something out without coming back. According to her, she got curious and went after him but fell into the woods on her way. However, Toriyasu upon hearing states that she is lying. He backs his statement by saying that Yotsun was trying to get with her in the woods. The state of Masaki's clothes authenticates Toriyasu's claims, leaving her somewhat uncomfortable. On the other hand, Lovepon gets upset over the fact that the others are concerned about Yotsun's whereabouts when there are claims that he might have forced himself on Masaki. She wishes that he be executed, but another tour member tells her to calm down. Masaki tries to oppose Toriyasu's theory, but few people believe her. This prompts Mikage to question her in such a way that will make her spill something he thinks she is hiding. Because of Masaki's current state, Mitomune stands up for her and tells Mikage to let Masaki rest before interrogating her. Meanwhile, other tour members freak out because they did not expect their first day to be as scary as it is already. A suggestion of leaving the village comes up among a few of the tour members, but for some reason, the driver wants to stay behind. The mere fact that some tour members want to leave the village enrages Valkana, and as such, he yells at the crowd, saying that they can leave if they want to. For some reason, he feels responsible for Yotsun, and he heads off alone to find him. After he leaves, a guy named Toshiboy runs after him with another tour member to find Yotsun. Dahara calls the attention of the remaining tour members, asking them if they would like to leave the village. Since only one person insists on living, he decides that everyone is going to stay. He defines some rules for the tour members and then differentiates them into 4 groups using a popular game. During the grouping exercise, Masaki walks away and Mitsumune follows her. On reaching her, she tells Mitsumune that he does not have to stand up for her as he did before. Her reason is that Mitsumune will be cut off from the rest of the tour members if he keeps on siding with her. Meanwhile, Mitsumune does not care what other people think because he believes that Masaki is telling the truth. Because he refuses to heed her advice, she flees the scene, leaving him behind. After she leaves, Hayato arrives and warns Mitsumune about his deeds with Masaki. He reminds him of the time he used to be there for him in high school. At that time, all of Hayato's advice to Mitsumune were true and helpful. In the present, he uses the fact that he has been there for Mitsumune to tell him not to go after Masaki like he intends to. In the meantime, Dahara finishes sharing the remaining tour members into groups. Mai emphasizes that she is hungry, and some other tour members agree with her. Because of that, Puko leads the way to a farm, so they can all get access to food. At the farm, the ladies look excited over the fact that now have access to vegetables. Nanko begins to harvest the veggies, and the way she does it intrigues Puko, who watches from a distance. On the other hand, Koharun takes a closer look at the farm and notices that the crops there are well maintained, as though the people in Nanaki Village lived there up till the previous day. Later that afternoon, Toriyasu helps out the ladies in the kitchen to make food for the others when they get back. After they are done preparing the food, the other crew members assemble at a point to get their lunch, one by one. Toriyasu and Mai are the ones serving the dish to the tour members. When Mitsumune goes to take his dish, Mai serves a little portion for him because she holds a grudge. Puko, on the other hand, witnesses this and tells her to stop messing with Mitsumune, but in her defense, Mitsumune is always sticking up for Masaki and she hates it. This alone gives Puko the impression that Mai is jealous of Mitsumune's interest in Masaki. In the meantime, Koharun arrives in the woods and tells Toshiboy and his mate to have lunch with the others. They both agree and leave Valkana behind searching for Yotsun. After they leave, Koharun tries to talk Valkana into having lunch, but he refuses. His reason is that he has not found Yotsun yet. Also, Koharin gets the impression that Valkana feels responsible for Yatsen, but he contradicts her, saying that he was just in his team. Elsewhere, Yuketsu freaks out again because he is in the same room with Jack, his proposed copycat. Fueled by rage, he gets up and gives Jack some weird names, but for some reason, Jack remains silent and does not say a word. At some point, he walks out of the room and comes back with a farm tool ready to kill Hyuketsu. Hyoketsu freaks out when Jack attacks him with the weapon, but the good thing is that Mitsumune and some others are there to prevent Jack from killing Hyuketsu. At sunset, Jack sits tied in ropes surrounded by a few of the tour members. Valkana, who is present at the time, receives info that Jack tried to kill Hyuketsu. Also, Mai takes a second look at Jack and recognizes his face. It turns out that Jack's other name is Sasaki, and he was in prison before the tour. The fact that Mai acts all surprised when she sees Jack makes the other tour members question if she knows him. According to her, Jack was in the same elementary school as her, but was involved in an incident about a year ago and was sent to juvenile prison. Toriyasu recognizes the story and completes it, saying that Jack stabbed his classmate last year. This revelation leaves the other terrified, and they all assume that he is a criminal. Since Hyuketsu is the victim, he proposes that Jack be killed, but Valkana opposes him. On the other hand, Lovepon suggests that Jack be executed, but Mitsumune stands in and defends Jack. The way he defends Jack leaves Jack himself shocked, because he never expected that Mitsumune would stand up for him. Along the line, Valkana leads the way to an underground cellar where Jack will be locked up for a while. While in the cellar, Mai yells at Valkana, saying that they do not have to go tot far in Jack's case. Meanwhile, Valkana has reason to believe that what he is doing is right, given the fact that Jack has a record of being hostile already. As time goes on, Koharun meets up with Valkana and enters into a conversation with him. There, she finds out that Valkana is worked up about Yatsen's case because he does not want to be the scapegoat. Also, Koharun says something that triggers Valkana, which is his reason for coming to Nanaki Village. Valkana's reason is that he was killed by society. Sometime in the past, he worked as a freelance systems engineer. At that time, he was blamed for leaking classified intel on some startup he built for an organization. In the present, he explains that he was erased from society because of his actions at his job, and because of that, he will never take the fall for someone else. Soon, their conversation gets pretty heated, as Koharun says something that makes Valkana hold her in a choking position. When he realizes himself, he lets Koharun go and walks away to find Yutsen. Later that night, Mitsumune heads out of his bed and goes outside to check up on Jack. On the way, he meets Mai, who is also concerned about Jack. She cares about Jack because he is the way he is, because of some intense bullying when he was younger. While they both converse, Lovepon arrives and suggests that Jack be executed. Mitsumune opposes the idea, and as such, she gets upset and pushes him off the bridge, hoping to drown him. While in the water, she sits above Mitsumune, pressing his head into the water to restrict his access to oxygen. At some point, Mitsumune frees himself from Lovepon's grasp and runs for his life. While running, he sees Yatsen's body floating away on the water and appears stunned. Hours before dawn, the majority of the tour members join Mitsumune, Mai, and Livapon to look for Yatsen's body. The people on active duty are Mitsumune, Valkana, Toshibioi, and some others with torches. During the search, Mikaji expresses doubt that Mitsumune was wrong about seeing Yatsen's body. He feels that Mitsumune might have seen something else, like a piece of driftwood. However, Lovepon interrupts him, saying that she saw a body, adding that Jack might have killed Yatsen. At some point, Dahar calls everyone's attention so that they can leave the stream back to base. Valkana, on the other hand, refuses to follow him because he has not found Yatsen yet. Some other tour members move in to prevent him from going alone, and while at it, they hear a loud beast noise from the woods, leaving them terrified. The sound alone makes everyone resort to Dahara's advice, and Valkana violently agrees this time. Early at dawn, two tour members named Jigoku and Nayanta guard the entrance of one of the buildings where other tour members are. They are armed with M4 rifles to aid in killing any threats that appear on sight. In the building, other tour members assemble, having a meeting about what they should do next. Valkana is pretty pumped about finding Yatsen, but Dahara seems to be scarred by what lies within the woods. Koharun thinks that whatever made the noise in the woods earlier is responsible for the footprints and bloodstains that they all saw. Other tour members try to ascertain the kind of monster it might be based on the sound that they heard. Each of them comes up with different suggestions, but one that catches attention is Nataya's suggestion, which states that it might be a siren. The conversation in the room gets to a part where Mikaj proposes they all leave the village as soon as possible. His proposal is backed by the fact that Yotsun might have been eaten by the beast in the woods. One of the crew members agrees with Mikaj's thoughts because he never expected to have such a terrible start in the village. On the other hand, Masaki opposes the idea of leaving the village. According to her, she does not think that they are in an ordinary village, coupled with the fact that they should not leave Yotsun and Jack behind. Also, she states that if they try to leave the mountain, someone else might get hurt or vanish on their way out. Mitsumune and Koharu agree with her, but Koharu's reason is that the village has not sustained any damage since they have been there. Mikaj, upon hearing this, disagrees with the fact that Koharu chooses to rely on unverified information about the village. He drops valid points that win the hearts of many, making them join his side with the sole aim of leaving the village. The people on his side, including Hayato, Maimai, Toriyasu, and some others, exit the room to prepare for the journey ahead. Mitsumune stays back with Valkana's side, but Hayato does not like his decision. He tries to persuade Mitsumune to leave the village, but fails because Mitsumune is hell-bent on finding Yotsun too. In the meantime, Mikaj requests that Nayanta and Jigoku join him on the journey out of the village for protection, and they both agree. Inside one of the buildings are Dahara, Valkana, and some others willing to stay back in the village. Others in attendance are Mr. Masaki, Koharu, Dozumon, Soy, Lion, and Nedaiya. Valkana is already aware of some people's reason for staying back, but he questions the others of their reason just to be sure. Netaiya's reason for staying back is that she cannot descend the mountain on heels. Later that night, Mikaji addresses his side on what they would do the next day regarding their movement. After he is done addressing them, he meets up with the bus driver and obtains the bus key. When he gets out of the building, he enters into a brief conversation with Valkana in some private space. During their conversation, he expresses that Yotsun's killer might be among the tour members, adding that the tour is too sketchy. His reason is that Koharu just came out of nowhere with intel about the village and joined them on the journey to the village. Koharu is his prime suspect, and when he reveals this, Valkana is left stunned. Valkana opposes Mikage's statement saying that Koharu is just happy she was able to locate the village she longed to see. This alone makes Mikage think that Valkana is rooting for Koharu and assumes that he is caught up in the middle of it all. Towards the end of their conversation, Mikage steps away saying that Masaki knows something that everyone does not, adding that if Valkana wants to stay back, he should find out what it is. The following day, Mikage and the people on his side set out to leave the village. Before they leave, Koharu hands Mikage a map to assist him in his journey to the bus and out of the mountain as a whole. Later that day, Mikage and the others journey out of the village down the mountain in the same direction they used to enter the village. In a short while, they reach the bus but encounter difficulties moving it from its position. After a couple of failed attempts, Mikage steps out of the bus and thinks about what he can do next. Gathered around him are others on his side, and they all hear the sound of a beast in the woods. The sound leaves them terrified, with some wishing that they never left the village at all. Mikage seizes control of the situation and directs the others on what they would do to leave the mountain as soon as possible. Back in the village, Valkana takes note of the fact that the bus driver is acting strange. Koharu notches the same thing and reveals her observation to Dahara. On the other hand, the bus driver walks weirdly into the woods, and Koharu charges after him to see what's up. Valkana joins her too, and Dahara follows him since he does not want to be left behind. Dozumon helps to lift some farm supplies, while Mitsumune searches through toolboxes to find weapons he will use to protect himself. Meanwhile, for some strange reason, the cellar that Jack was caged in lies open with no sign of him in it. Back in the woods, Nyanta marks the trees that they pass by using some spray paint. She does this to note the path they have taken to avoid confusion up ahead. At some point, it begins to rain and their clothes become soaking wet. As they move on to their destination, they hear a loud noise similar to the one before, but this time it sounds closer than before. Even at that, Nyanto leads the way, leaving markings on trees. It gets to a point where the paint finishes, but what is more concerning is that they all arrive at a tree that has been marked before. Amid the shock, they all hear the sound of a beast again, and Hyukitsu is left terrified. His fear intensifies when he sees Jack some distance away from him in the woods, carrying a dead look in his eye. In an attempt to run for his life, he slips and falls down a cliff, leaving Mikage and the others more terrified. Later on, Mikage and his team dash out of their location. While running for their lives, Nyanta gives the signal that they should stop to avoid falling off a cliff. Mikage's heart skips a beat when he sees that he is an inch close to losing his life. He looks pissed over the fact that the cliff was not even on the map, but relieved when he sees an alternate train track. Elsewhere, the bus driver sees a little girl in the woods and chases after her. While in search of the girl, he bumps into Valkana and Koharu and then looks stunned. Later that evening, Valkana slams the bus driver past a door, questioning him about who or what he was looking for in the woods. Koharin arrives and tries to calm Valkana down so that the bus driver can speak. At the same time, Mikaj and his team journey on a train track to a point which is the entrance of a tunnel. Some of Mikaj's team proceed inside, and where they all see something that leaves them running away for their dear lives. When Mai runs out of the tunnel, she panics, telling Mikaj that she saw a giant Mitsumune in the tunnel. At the same time, the bus driver reveals that he saw Misato, his daughter who died about 10 years ago. He also reveals that he intends to take his daughter home with him so that things can go back to how it was in his family. The way he speaks shocks Valkana, Koharin, and everyone present because he is coming from a place of pain. Later that evening, Mikage and his team make it back to the village, leaving Mitsumune and the others shocked. When Mai sees Mitsumune in the building, she screams because she saw a giant version of him in the tunnel from earlier. Wanko notices this and calms her down, saying that it is the normal Mitsumune that is present. Also, because Mikage saw Jack in the woods, he leads the way to the cellar to check if he is still there. To his surprise, Jack has escaped the cellar, and the rest of the teammates begin to think about how he escaped. Lovepon has reason to believe that Mitsumune and Mayim Nai helped him escape because she saw them together on the night he was imprisoned initially. Along the line, Valkana heads into the cellar with Dahara and some others to check out the situation in the cellar. After analyzing the situation there, he heads back into the main building to have a meeting with the other tour members. During the meeting, Wanko explained that Mikage and his other teammates could not leave the mountain because the bus was stuck the whole time. Nyanta also adds that the map was unreliable when they attempted to leave the mountain. A girl named Yuna also speaks about the beast voices she heard in the woods, explaining that the sound got closer every single time it was heard. Another tour member speaks about Hyuketsu's disappearance, while Toshiboy speaks about Jack's appearance in the woods. Although other people on Mikage's team thought that running away from the tunnel was the safest thing to do, Mikage thinks otherwise. He feels that he charged through the tunnel. He would have found a way off the island. Moving on, the meeting heads to a point where Yuna brings up a topic about the giant Mitsumune Mai saw in the tunnel earlier. One of the tour members seemed relieved because it was a giant Mitsumune Mai had to deal with. Her reason is that things would have gotten rougher if it was someone else that they saw. On the other hand, other tour members of Mikage's team speak about hearing different sounds on their way out of the village. Mikage thinks that it is strange for such to happen because they are supposed to be hearing the same thing instead of different sounds. To prove the speculation right, he says that he heard laughter in the woods. Meanwhile, others heard beast-like sounds and other distinctive sounds. At some point, he begins to blame everything on Koharin, saying that she led him and the other tout members to the wrong village. He thinks that she is up to something. Meanwhile, Valkana does not like the idea that he is attacking Koharin without proof. Even at that, Mikage states that all the tour members are suspicious, adding that Masaki is his prime suspect. His reason is because Masaki was against his teammates leaving the mountain as a whole. When he begins to speak about Masaki, Valkana opposes him, and the tension in the room increases. What makes it worse is when Lion points strangely at Mitsumune, saying that he disappeared and reappeared in a split second. This also freaks everyone out because she can see dead people. After she makes this ability known to the tour members, the driver, who is present at the time, grabs onto her, asking if she can see his daughter, Misato. Because of the way she holds her, other tour members free Lion from his grasp. Because Mikage is unaware of the issue with the driver seeing ghosts, he questions Valkana's side about what is going on. The fact that they kept the driver's condition away from him makes him more suspicious of them. Meanwhile, Koharun's reason for not revealing the truth was that she did not want the other tour members to freak out. Even at that, Mikage lashes out at Koharun and his side, saying that he cannot stay around people he cannot trust. For some reason, Lovepon is obsessed with executing Mitsumune because he was termed a ghost earlier. At first, the tour members freak out, but Mitsumune is left defending the fact that he is not a ghost. Mai jumps up to clear Mitsumune's name off the suspects list because she was there when he wanted to check up on Jack. At some point, most tour members decide to call the meeting quits because it is late. Before the meeting ends, Mikage requests for people who share his ideals to join his side, but no one does. He then leaves the building angrily because he does not trust any one of them again. Minutes after the meeting, Jigoku meets up with Mikage, asking to speak to him privately. In the meantime, Mitsumune walks behind the ladies, up to the point where they reach their building for the night. Hayato meets up with him at the spot and questions his reason for being there. He speaks to Mitsumune about his recent actions, emphasizing that he is beginning to stalk out in a bad way. He then tells him to lay low for a while so that the others will not consider him a suspect. After saying these, he leaves, and some ladies meet up with Mitsumune from behind. They try to convince Mitsumune to stand guard in front of their building, and they succeed, leaving Mitsumune with a farm tool as a weapon. In the meantime, Jigoku engages in a meeting with Mikage, Lovapon, and Nayanta at the underground cellar. The meeting is about those whom they consider suspects, beginning from Koharun down to Mitsumune. Jigoku suggests that they need to find a way to make the suspects talk, and Lovapon agrees, carrying a dead look on her face. She likes the idea of pain and torture to get information from people. Elsewhere, Valkana, Koharun, and Dahara engage in a meeting where they speak about the driver's condition. Valkana is not sure if he can see ghosts, but Dahara refers to the fact that Lion spoke about seeing Mitsumune as a ghost. Towards the end of their meeting, Valkana warns Koharun to be careful because she is under suspicion from Mikage and his allies. At midnight, Mitsumune walks around guarding the entrance of the female hostel while Lovapon, Nayanta, and Jigoku keep close tabs on him. At some point, Clion arrives at the scene and engages in a conversation with Lion. The conversation is centered around the fact that Lion can see dead people. For some reason, Mitsumune thinks that the ability is cool, excluding the fact that he was called a ghost. On the other hand, Lion reveals that she called Mitsumune a ghost just to clear the tension in the room at that time. Mitsumune understands what she means and then tells her that she can use him anytime she likes. At this point, Lion warns him about playing good to both sides, adding that he might get into danger because of it. In the end, she leaves telling herself that she can only see people who are about to die. Immediately after she leaves, Lovapon and her teammates sedate Mitsumune and capture him in the underground cellar. When Mitsumune regains consciousness, he finds himself restrained up to his mouth to prevent him from moving or speaking. His position entices Lovapon, who is pretty hyped about torturing him. At some point, Jigoku notices that a fire is burning close to their building, and he informs Mikage and the others. As a result, they all run out of the cellar to save their lives, leaving Mitsumune barely mobile. After they leave, Masaki arrives and cuts Middlesumun's ropes. She then tells him not to panic, because she had set the fire in such a way that it would not spread to their position. They both make it out of the cella into the woods where Mitsumune tries to catch his breath. There, he sees a giant penguin-like monster and calls it Tokimune. Somewhere in the woods, Mikage freaks out while inhaling smoke from the fire that Masaki set. Jogyoku analyzes the situation and finds out that the fire was set in such a way that it would not spread. The same thing goes for Nayanta, who arrives at the same conclusion of the fire not spreading. With this knowledge, Mikage fumes over the fact that the fire was set up on purpose. At some point, Nayanta notches that Lovapon is surprisingly missing and she questions where she might be. Little does she know that Lovapon is running through the woods, spitting the word execute out of her mouth. At the point where she falls, she becomes terrified because of the voices she hears in her head and from the woods. She then recalls some time in the past when she attended a funeral, and also when she shielded her mother from taking a beating from a man. Years ago, a man named Oni used to visit Lovepon's house to see her mother. On one of those days, Lovepon's mother served him tea and asked her daughter to pour him a cup. While Oni eats lunch, he hands Lovepon's mother some cash and tries to get intimate with her. Lovapon understands the situation and leaves the room so they can have some privacy. Later that evening, Lovapon overhears her mother being beaten by Oni and then hurries upstairs to see what's up. On getting there, she finds out that the door is locked, but the man heads out after some seconds. On the other hand, Lovapon hurries downstairs to wipe off some disrespectful pictures she drew of the man. Unfortunately, she is too late, and as such, she takes a beating from the man. In the present, she sees a giant face in the shape of a scary mask coming after her. Conversely, Nayanta, while looking for Lovapon, begins to hear some bees buzzing in the woods. What she sees or hears causes her to run, leaving Mikage and Jigoku clueless because they saw nothing. As a result, Jigoku chases after her, leaving Mikage behind on his own. While Nayanta charges through the woods trying to avoid the sound of the bees, she recalls a time in the past when she got bullied by one of her high school classmates. At that time, she was forced to shoplift to get her backpack, but she did not have it in her. As a result, one of the bullies threw her backpack to the road and it got squashed by a moving car. That evening, she heads to a toy gun shop to buy a piece to begin her act of revenge. The following day, she assembles the gun and aims it at the girl who bullied her earlier. She then pulls the trigger and laughs after she sees that the girl is affected by the rubber pin bullet. She tries it the second day, but this time she gets caught by one of the girl's friends. As a result, she gets tied under a beehive by her bullies. The one in charge of them aims a gun at the hive and fires shots randomly to trigger the bees to attack Nayanta. At some point, she hits the mark, and Nayanta yells at the sight of the bees. In the present, Nayanta runs away from a giant bee chasing her through the woods. At the same time, Lovapon runs away from the floating mask, yelling execute on her way. Sometime in the past, she set a trap for Oni that left him falling on the stairs. Because of that, she got beaten, but this time more brutally for her age. The reason her family has to go through such pain is that her family died and left them in huge debt, which explains why her mother is dependent on Oni's mother. Lovepon does not like the idea of that, and she intends to execute Oni to be free of him. Her obsession with execution grows to the point where she fills up a paper with the word "at school." Back in real time, Jigiku loses track of Nyanta and stops at a point to find her. There, a giant silicon monster comes at him, leaving him terrified. The sight of the monster makes him recall the time he was training to become a soldier. At that time, he completed all the necessary tasks, but the only thing wrong with him was his height. For this reason, he got a silicon implanted in his body to boost his height, but he failed to meet the mark. In the end, he sits down at a riverside thinking about his failure. Back in the present, Mikage looks pissed over the fact that Nyanta, Lovepon, and Jigoku are gone. While strolling in the woods, he thinks about the person who smoked him out of the cellar. A list of potential suspects floods his mind, but he seems clueless on who it is. Just then, he begins to hear some weird sound in the woods, but ignores it at first. Next, he hears laughter, and he turns around saying that he does not want to be laughed at. Even at that, the laughing sound becomes intensified and he yells in anger. A few months ago, Mikage was in charge of supplying a prototype for a company he was to work for. The functionalities he was willing to provide did not seem feasible, and as such one of the board members discouraged him. However, another board member sees light in Mikage's offer and awards the contract to him because he believes he can meet the requirements on time. After Mikage gets the offer, he moves along with production, but then finds out that he placed the wrong date on one of the material's delivery dates. In the end, he does not meet up with his contract after promising to do wonders in the company. This alone causes the board members to laugh at him in a disgraceful manner. In the present, Mikage yells, "Don't laugh at me," as he recalls what happened to him in the past. His prototype, which is a train, rides closer to him, laughing at him while on the way to his position. The same thing goes for Lovepon, who falls after running from the floating mask. This time she falls, and she gets up recalling the bad things she did to Oni in the past. With pain at heart, she jumps up yelling, "Execute," at the floating mask. On the other hand, Jigoku fires countless shots at the silicon monster because he blames it for meeting up to the army's requirement. The sound of his gun wakes Koharun, who was initially half asleep. Other tour members hear the sound too, and they head out with her to see if a monster showed up. On getting out, they all find out that Mitsumune is no longer standing guard. Mai wonders where he is, but the other ladies assume he ran off because they think he is undependable. Also, they take note of the fact that Nyanta and Lovepon are absent, and they wonder what is going on. The guys arrive at the scene and Koharun informs Valkana of her observations, including the part where several people are missing. Elsewhere, Mitsumune runs with Masaki as they both get chased by a giant monster. At some point, Masaki falls and Mitsumune helps her up, while Lovepon and Nyanta run away from their monsters. Their comrades search for them in the woods to see if they are there. The first person they find is Jigoku, who claims that he was chased by a monster. When Lovepon and Nyanta are found, they all tell separate stories, saying that they were chased by different monsters. According to Nyanta, she was chased by a bee, but Jigoku interrupts her saying that he was chased by a silicon monster. Although the crew members are freaked out by their confessions, Koharun agrees with the fact that Nyanta and the others might have seen different things. She then sings a song she sang the first time she met with the crew. But Valkana interrupts her, asking if the song has something to do with the events occurring in the village. She replies by saying yes, adding that the song means dragging the depth of one's mind out into the open. Hayato interprets it as being able to see what is hidden within oneself, but then questions if what lies within takes shape in the real world. Soon, the lights go out and Dahara suggests going back to base. Wanko agrees with him, saying that they can resume their search when the sun rises. At the base, Koharun takes out a document containing information about Masaki. According to the source material, Masaki, who is aged 16, went missing about some time ago in a village very close to Nanaki Village. This alone raises the eyebrows of many, leaving a guy named Mambe questioning the reason why a person who went missing was there. This alone makes some tour members think that Masaki might be a ghost. Another confirmation of ghosts comes up when Nedaya speaks about the bus driver seeing his dead daughter. Meanwhile, Mitsumune charges through the woods with Masaki while running away from his monster. While running through the woods, Masaki falls at some point, but Mitsumune turns back to help her up. She looks as if she wants to tell Mitsumune something, but cannot say anything given their current situation. Years ago, when Mitsumune was a kid, he was gifted a penguin toy that resembled the monster chasing him in real life. At that time, his brother Tokimune mocked him for getting a stuffed animal for a toy. He calls him Wired, adding that he is a girl. The way he speaks to his brother makes him react, and as such, their mother, Mitsuko, heads in to handle the situation. From the way Mitsuko treats Tokimune, despite his harsh behavior, one can tell that she is fond of him over Mitsumune. This also reflects on Mitsumune when he sees that his mother hanged a picture Tokimune drew over his own. One day, Tokimune defied his mother's instructions and played at the top of a high building. Mitsumune warns him to stop, but he does not listen. When Mitsuko gets there, she yells at Tokimune, causing him to fall off the building out of shock. In the present, Mitsumune falls off a cliff and appears unconscious. Masaki descends the cliff and helps him to his feet while proceeding into the woods. Back in the past, at the time when Tokimune was pronounced dead, Mitsuko did not process the news well, and as such, she was admitted to the hospital. When Mitsumune comes to see her, she addresses him as Tokimune due to their striking resemblance. Unfortunately, he is forced to play along with it to make his mum feel better. In the present, Mitsumune wakes up only to find out that he has been crying while unconscious. It appears that he was thinking about his past when he was out. In the meantime, the meeting at the base heads to a point where the tour members consider the fact that Masaki might be a ghost. Also, the topic of the different monsters seen in the woods is brought up. At this point, Mikage arrives in the room questioning the topic of the monster. After hearing what Toriyasu has to say, he confirms that Nyanta and the others heard different monsters, but his issue is the reason why no one wanted to talk about what they heard or saw. He reflects on the already said facts that conclude that the monsters are made from one's mental hang-ups. Elsewhere, Mitsumune speaks to Masaki about the time he became a substitute for his brother after his passing. At that time, he was called Tokimune at home, and it extended to school because of his mother, Mitsuko. As time went on, his dad, Sakai, became concerned about Mitsumune's name because he would be leaving elementary school soon. He begs his son at some point to play along with the name for a while at least, until he is done with elementary. Years later, when Mitsumune finished junior high school, he was still addressed as Tokimune by his mum, but he played along. At some point, Sakai apologizes to him and begs him to keep up with the name until he is done with school. Surprisingly, he agrees to his father's request, although he dislikes the fact that he is being addressed as his brother. In the present, Mitsumune explains this to Masaki, adding that he became Tokimune at some point. He also explains that he was happy when Masaki told him she liked his real name because it made him happy. His reason for joining the tour is that he wants to live in a place where no one knows him, so he can live as Mitsumune and not Tokimune. After Masaki hears this, she jumps down from a platform and stretches out her hand, signifying that Mitsumune should join her. In a short while, they both arrive at the entrance of the scary tunnel and proceed inside. Masaki leads the way inside the tunnel, telling Mitsumune that if he wants to go back to his old life, he needs to pass through the tunnel first. At some point, the giant penguin monster appears again, leaving Mitsumune terrified. Masaki surprisingly passes through the monster, leaving Mitsumune all by himself. However, Mitsumune summons the courage to face his demons, and as such, he charges at the monster to defeat it. In the end, he gets knocked to the ground and then crawls out of the tunnel. Later that night, Valkana and the others gather outside their building holding torches. Mikage is quite convinced that Masaki is a ghost bringing monsters to Nanaki Village. He affirms the fact because of the lyrics from the song that Koharun sang earlier. Now, a plot to eliminate Masaki grows within the tour members because they believe that if she goes, the monsters will disappear. Also, the tour members intend to remain in the village because they cannot go back to their past lives. Because of that, they all agree to take out the threat in the village to make it more conducive for them to stay. Now, the tour members are on the same page, but Hayato brings up the fact that Mitsumune might be with Masaki. He explains that Masaki has got Mitsumune wrapped around her fingers, and he does not like it. After he reveals this to the other tour members, all the tour members conclude that they need to neutralize Masaki. Hours before dawn, Mitsumune walks alone, heading back to the village. At some point, Hayato finds him and asks if everything is alright. When Mitsumune asks about the other tour members, Hayato replies saying that they are waiting for him, with Mikage's team sorry for what they did to him. When he gets to the village, he meets up with Mikage, who apologizes for what he did to him earlier. Before Mitsumune arrived at the village, Nyanta saw him from a distance and alerted the other crew members. The fact that Masaki was not with him makes Mikage assume that she ran away. Meanwhile, he warned the other tour members about bringing up Masaki when Mitsumune arrives. His reason was that Mitsumune might already be brainwashed by Masaki. While they all propose their plan, Koharun carries a sad look on her face because she does not like what they want to do to Mitsumune. In the present, Hayato apologizes to Mitsumune once again for what he did to him in the past. Dahara then questions him about Masaki's whereabouts, but he gets a side-eye from Hayato, meaning that he should shut up. To make things not seem awkward or suspicious, Yadao questions Mitsumune about what happened in the woods under the guise that he wants to save Masaki too. Mitsumune, upon hearing this, lightens up and ends up telling Hayato and the others what went on in the woods, including the part with the tunnel. Out of curiosity, Koharun further questions him about what Masaki said concerning the tunnel, but Valkana interrupts her saying that Mitsumune must be tired. He then signals Hayato, who stands up and leads the way to a room so that Mitsumune can get some rest. In Mitsumune's absence, Koharun expresses her hatred for the plan Valkana and Mikage cooked up. Mikage's excuse is that they have no other choice but to plan along so that they can get Masaki. In the meantime, Mitsumune notices something off about the crew members, and then questions Hayato as to why they are nice to him. Hayato then replies by saying that they are nice because they were cruel to him. The other reason is that they are worried about how worn out he looks. After the brief conversation with Mitsumune ends, Hayato leaves the room pissed about the fact that Mitsumune took Masaki's advice over his own. He feels that Mitsumune has a chance of survival only if he keeps listening to him and doing as he says. Later that night, Valkana and the others proceed as planned to find Masaki. Because they all think she is a ghost, they prepare weapons of exorcism and other sacred objects that they think will work on her. Immediately after that, they split up and set off into the woods to find Masaki. The only people absent from the group are Lion and Nanko to give the excuse that they are sick. Soon, Valkana's side arrives at the tunnel and they find Masaki walking through it. Elsewhere, Lion heads out of the females' building and Nanko joins her. It appears that they are not on par with Mikage's plans, and they want to warn Mitsumune about what lies ahead. When they arrive at Mitsumune's room, they wake him up and inform him that Masaki is in danger. In the meantime, Masaki stands tied to a cross in such a way that restricts her movement. She begs the tour members to believe that she is not a ghost, but no one hears her out. The exception is Koharun, who is uncomfortable with the way the other tour members are handling the situation. She suggests talking to her, but Love Pond does not like the idea. Rather, she takes out her dagger intending to stab Masaki to death. Also, it turns out that some of the ladies are not on par with Love Pond's methods, and as such, they speak against it. This is because blood will be on their hands if Masaki is not a ghost. Even at that, Hayato volunteers to stab Masaki and then takes the dagger from Love Upon. His rage stems from the belief that Masaki seduced Mitsumune into his current state. He charges at Masaki to stab her, but Valkana holds him back. While struggling, the blade escapes Masaki's hand and gets a thin slice of Masaki's upper arm. The dagger causes Masaki to bleed, and some of the tour members are left shocked because ghosts do not bleed. However, Hayato is not convinced that she is not a ghost and as such tries to stab her again. This time around, Mitsumune arrives in time and punches him away from Masaki. He looks pissed because the person he calls a friend had the mind to betray him like that. To further reduce aggression and violence, Valkana holds Mitsumune back from inflicting pain on Hayato. He then pins him down, allowing Hayato to stab Masaki as he wanted to. At that moment, Masaki weeps and begs for Mitsumune's sake, adding that she will say everything that she knows. As promised, she begins to tell the truth, starting with the fact that she has been to Nanaki Village before. This initial confession leaves Mitsumune shocked because he was not expecting to hear such. Some months ago, Masaki joined her cousin, Reiji, to Nanaki Village to see what it looks like. At that time, her cousin used a map as guidance to locate Nanaki Village as fast as possible. Masaki followed him wherever he went, and it appears that she is quite fond of him. Also, Reiji possesses a book that contains markers that will ease the journey to Nanaki Village. He has managed to locate some of them, which assures him that he is on the right track. Later that day, they both continue their journey to Nanaki Village, but on the way, the fig gets thicker. While charging through the woods, an old man who drives a van warns Reiji and Masaki that they shouldn't go to Nanaki Village. He offers to take them off the mountain, but Reiji declines and runs away with Masaki. His reason for running is that he thinks that the old man is quite shady based on how he approached him. As time goes on, Reiji finds Nanaki Village and shows the place to Masaki. Upon getting into the village, Reiji uses his camera to take pictures of the houses and other buildings present. He also finds out that no one lives in the village, which prompts him to take more pictures. However, Masaki, being time-conscious, reminds him that they need to leave the village in time. Reiji still insists on taking pictures, but then gets carried away at some point. When he realizes himself, he finds out that hours have passed him, but then agrees to leave the village with Masaki. On their way off the mountain, Reiji sees something that scares him and makes him run away with Masaki. While running, Reiji questions Masaki if she can see the monster chasing them, and she replies by saying no. It gets to a point where Masaki slips and falls off a cliff, but Reiji cannot catch her in time. In the present, Masaki narrates all that went down in Nanaki Village after she fell off the cliff. According to her, she tried to get back up the mountain, but failed after a couple of attempts. Because of that, she was not not able to find Nanaki Village again. After she is done with her story, Koharu takes off the ropes from her body to allow her to move freely. In turn, Masaki apologizes for not saying anything about her past encounter earlier. She adds that she just wants to find Reijo because she misses him. Meanwhile, Lovapon and some others have reason to believe that Masaki is lying. Because of how difficult it was for Dahar to find the village, he questioned Masaki how she was able to find the village at ease in the past. In her defense, she states that Reiji was the one investigating the village and he found it. Also, it is at this time that the tour members find out that Reiji is Masaki's cousin. When asked if she has been able to find her cousin, she replies saying no, adding that he might be in another village. The fact that she mentions another village raises the eyebrows of many, especially Valkana, who never believed another village existed, aside from Nanaki Village. Unfortunately, the concept of other villages is merely an assumption on Masaki's end because her cousin made mention of it in the past. Out of curiosity, the other tour members question her about how they are going to leave the village, if they want to. Before she could answer, a suggestion of using the tunnel comes up, but Masaki interrupts, saying that they should not go to the tunnel. The way she says this shows that she is serious, and this causes the tour members to question her reason for saying such. According to her, she thought that it was the initial exit, but she was wrong. Mikage, who is present at the time, questions Masaki about seeing monsters. This is because, according to her narration, she could not see the monster that Reiji was running from. Masaki replies to Mikage saying that she cannot see the monsters that everyone else sees. This revelation leaves Mikage and the others shocked because they never expected to hear such. Also, disbelief floods the minds of the tour members as Masaki denies having something to do with Yotsun. The fact that she has been missing before, according to Koharu's source material, encourages the tour members to think Masaki has been lying all along. In her defense, she states that she stayed in a nearby village so that she could find her way back to Nanaki Village to find her cousin. At that time, she learned about the online tour and decided to join them in Nanaki Village. After listening to what she says, Mikage asks her a bunch of questions relating to how she survived in the nearby village she talked about earlier. After the brief interrogation session, he brings up Koharu's source material and shows that the information there contradicts what Masaki said, leaving everyone shocked. As usual, Lovapon insists on Masaki's execution one more, but Masaki begs, saying that she just wants to find Reiji. Everyone opposes Masaki except Mitsumune, who takes her side to defend her. Amid the chaos, the bus mysteriously arrives at the scene and stops in front of Masaki and Mitsumune. The door opens and the bus driver forcefully takes both of them inside the bus. Before he zooms off, Hayato hangs onto the bus so he does not lose track of Masaki and the others. Meanwhile, the other tour members are left wondering why the bus driver decided to abduct Masaki. Toshibi concludes that the bus driver wants Masaki to show him the exit of the village, but Toriyasu interrupts him, saying that the driver is clueless about Masaki. This leaves the other tour members planning how they will find and stop the bus from going further. Amid the planning phase, the detective, Nanko, analyses facts raised about Masaki, beginning from the part where she cannot see monsters. After some careful analysis, Nanki states that Masaki cannot see monsters because she does not have the psychological scars that other tour members have. She also explains that if one has no scars, then the person will have no monsters to see. This statement alone makes Toriyasu question the possibility of escaping the village if he can stop seeing monsters. In the end, Nanko concludes by saying that all her statements are hypotheses, adding that she needs to confirm if they are true. Elsewhere, the driver stops the bus in the woods and grabs onto Masaki because he believes she can make him see his daughter. Mitsumune resists him for a while, but after some convincing, he lets her go. In the meantime, the other tour members plan how they are going to go after the bus. Valkana is present at a storehouse gathering tools for the course, and while at it, Koharu approaches him. She reveals her intentions, which are to find and help Masaki because she believes that she was not lying earlier. She then begs Valkana for help and he agrees because they have similar goals. Later on, Lion and Nako meet up with Mai Mai, who throws stones at a stream. She seems pissed because other tour members are against Masaki, and it reminds her of what her friends did to her in the past. The only thing is that Masaki has someone sticking up for her, but she doesn't. Early at dawn, Koharu sneaks out of the female's building to meet up with Valkana as planned. While walking through the woods, Valkana protects Koharu from an arrow coming at her. At first, he thinks that he is the only one seeing the arrow, but believes that they are real since Koharu can see them too. At some point, the archer falls to the ground only for Valkana to find out that he is Hyuketsu. After Valkana confirms that Hyuketsu is the archer, he looks shocked at first, but then moves swiftly to contain him. Amid the struggle, Valkana breaks Hyuketsu's bow, leaving him harmless. While holding him in a locked position, He questions Hyuketsu about why he attacked them. Hyuketsu replies saying that he was rescued by an unidentified individual. Before he can complete his statement, an arrow pierces his back from the woods, which causes Valkana to chase after the potential archer. He leaves Koharun behind to look after the now injured Hyuketsu until he gets back. Elsewhere, the bus driver seeks answers from Masaki regarding the ghost he saw. Masaki has no information to give him, but Hayato is left thinking about the idea of seeing ghosts. He explains that the others are seeing ghosts, but is quite worried that Masaki lacks this ability. Also, he explains that his reason for doubting Masaki is because she often comes off as shady. He backs this up by emphasizing that Masaki did not state her intention right from the start of their trip. The conversation in the bus goes on till Masaki begins to speak about the tunnel that lies ahead. Because of what the bus driver hears about the tunnel, he marches the accelerator and drives recklessly heading towards the tunnel. His reason for doing so is that he wants to see his daughter again, and he believes that he can achieve that in the tunnel. While on the way to the tunnel, Masaki speaks against the trip, saying that it is dangerous. However, Mitsumune freaks out when he sees his monster chasing the bus. The same thing goes for Hayato, who freaks out when sees his monster in the form of an old woman out the windshield. Amid the chaos, the driver halts the bus when he sees his daughter via the front mirror in the bus. Hayato seizes the opportunity to run out of the bus since he is scared of his monster, while the driver stays back to speak to his daughter's ghost. Masaki and Mitsumune are also outside because they are worried about Hayato. Hayato calms down when Mitsumune speaks to him, but then finds out that the driver is missing. For some strange reason, Masaki believes that the bus driver went back to the village. She also speaks about going further from their location, leaving Hayato more curious. In the meantime, Makaj alerts his side to go out and find the bus. Before they all leave, he makes it clear that he is suspicious of Valkana, but fails to outline why. Beyond the tunnel, Mitsumune and Hayato find out that another village lies ahead. A stone slab present at the scene carries an inscription, "To Masaki, if you want to go any further, accept Nanaki." After Hayato reads the inscription out loud, Mitsumune wonders what Nanaki means. Hayato uses the fact that they know nothing of the term to suggest that they move on to the new village. Even at that, Masaki is still against proceeding to the new village because Hayato opposes her. He speaks about the good side of exploring the village, which includes the possibility of Masaki finding her cousin Reiji. Later that morning, they all proceed into the village. Although it is covered by fog, they manage to navigate their way past some buildings to the point where they enter one. From Hayato's observation, the building resembles Nanaki's, in that people have lived there recently. Moving on, they all explore another part of the village, but on the way, Masaki says that she wants to pee. Hayato agrees to let her go, and then suggests that Mitsumune join him in the building to get a large view of the village. Before they leave, Masaki peeps back to see if they are not looking, and then she runs off in a different direction. While in the big building, Mitsumune and Hayato proceed upstairs to get a bird's-eye view of the village. A conversation begins between them where Hayato stresses that Masaki is bad news. As usual, Mitsumune takes her side and defends her motives. Their conversation gets to a point where Hayato lashes out because Mitsumune acts like he is the only one who has suffered in life. For this reason, he reveals that his grandmother terrifies him. His late grandmother was the ghost that scared him while in the tunnel about some minutes ago. He also explains that, as a kid, he would be locked up with his grandmother in an attic whenever he took a beating from his parents. He then goes on to give a narration about his life when he was growing up as a kid. At that time, his family was rich, so he had access to all the comforts in the world. His mother would often use him as a fashion doll, while his dad would get him into anything he was good at. On the periods when Hayato messes up, he is beaten and locked up in the attic where a picture of his grandmother lies. Before his grandmother died, she was exiled to the same attic because she grew old and senile. Another reason for the exile was that Hayato's parents did not want their neighbors to see the old woman in her condition. Hayato's parents cared only about their reputation, and as such, they made life hell for Hayato, molding him into the ideal son. In the present, Mitsumune questions Hayato if he ever stood up to his parents, and he replies saying yes. The downside was that he would get beaten over and over again. At some point in his life, he gave up and started living his life as his parents' puppet up until the point where he met Mitsumune. In the present, Hayato reveals that he needed a puppet of his own because of the treatment he got from his parents. He also adds that he finally got free when he met Mitsumune because he could control him. This statement leaves Mitsumune shocked because he never expected that his close friend would see him as a puppet. This realization causes a heated argument between them because Hayato insists that Miyotsumune remains his puppet. Finally, Mitsumune heads off in anger but stumbles on a ribbon belonging to Masaki on his way to find her. Her searches for her to the extent where he reaches at top of a hill. There, he meets Valkana, who is searching for the archer that shot Hyuketsu. Valakana, upon seeing Mitsumune, looks shocked, but he questions him if he saw anyone run by him. He reveals that he was attacked by Hyuketsu and is looking for the person who was with him. During their conversation, Valaka's monster appears and scares him. The same thing happens to Mitsumune, but in his case, he chases after his monster to find it. During the chase, he descends the cliff only to hear the voice of his mother calling him Tokimune. While walking towards the source of the voice, he denies the name Tokimune and declares that he is Mitsumune. Meanwhile, a smaller version of his monster walks beside him into the fog. Moving on, Valkana discovers that Mitsumune is gone after his monster fades away. At the same time, the detective, Nanko, leads the way to the tunnel with Lion and Mai Mai following her behind. Her reason for heading to the tunnel is to prove that the monsters will stop appearing if they get rid of their metal hang-ups. A few meters away from the tunnel, Mia realizes their destination and freaks out. She does not like the idea that Nanko wants to use her as a test subject to prove her hypothesis, but Lion is interested to see the result. To make Mai Mai feel better, Nanko offers to join her in the tunnel. Just before they leave for the tunnel, an arrow lands at their position. This time, the archer reveals himself, and it turns out he is Jack. His presence causes the ladies to run for their lives, but on the way, Lion falls to the ground, giving Jack an opening to catch her. Just before he can reach her, Reiji arrives and punches him in such a way that leaves him temporarily unconscious. In the meantime, Mitsumune opens his eyes only to find out that he is no longer in Nanaki Village. Later that evening, Mitsumune wakes up again, and his dad, Sakai, hugs him with tears rolling down his eyes. He addresses his son by his actual name, shocking him in the process. When sleep clears off Mitsumune's eyes, his father offers him his favorite drink. The fact that Sakai remembers Mitsumune's favorite drinks lightens him up because he thought he had forgotten. A few days ago, when Sakai found out that Mitsumune was missing, his mother was watching a show on TV that talked about the First Life Redo tour. In anger, Sakai turns off the TV, ignoring the wish of his mother. He then turns around to answer a call from Yokota, an old classmate, checking to see if he is okay. During the call, he yells at Yokota because he does not want to talk about his missing son. Another call comes in after that one, which causes him to throw the telephone to the ground. The noise from the phone causes Misuko to come out of her room saying these words, "So I killed another one." In the present, Sakai tells Mitsumune that his mum knows he is not Tokimune. According to him, Mitsuko cannot handle the truth, coupled with the fact that she thinks she is responsible for Tokimune's death. He also adds that Mitsuko is getting well, and for this reason, he begs Mitsumune to come home. On the other hand, Mitsumune declines to go home because he has unfinished business in Nanaki Village. He refuses to state his reason because he feels his dad will not believe him. In the end, Sakai weeps over the fact that he put his son through so much pain while he was growing up. He apologizes to Mitsumune for what he did to him, and then tells him that he can do what he wants. Also, he hands Mitsumune a card of the person who saved him, and when Mitsumune takes a look, he becomes shocked. Back in Nanaki Village, Mikage yells at the remaining tour memes, telling them that they need to do something about Masaki if they want to live there. For some reason, the tour memes' fighting spirit has reduced over the past 24 hours, and some of them act sluggishly. The tour organizer, Dahara, takes out a cigarette and begins smoking, giving the excuse that he needs his nicotine fix. Some other tour members display some signs of weakness, leaving Mukage irritated. He lashes out at the tour members, but this time, they do not listen to him. Rather, they remind him that he is not their leader. As a result, Mikage leaves the scene pissed, while some other tour members agree to take a nap. Later that night, Reiji serves Nanko, Mai Mai, and Leonti in his domain. They all converse after a while, and Mai Mai finds out that he is Reiji. At first, Mai Mai suggests that Reiji join her back to Nanaki Village to find Masaki, but he declines to follow them. This leaves Mai Mai shocked because Masaki got into a hole of trouble looking for him. Reiji speaks of his relationship with Masaki as one-sided, and this pisses Mai Mai off. While Mai Mai lashes out at him, he remains composed, but apologizes in the end. Elsewhere, Mitsumune proceeds upstairs as instructed by the note his father gave him. On getting there, he sees Yotsun, who looks very much alive. Yotsun looks excited to see Mitsumune. Meanwhile, Mitsumune is left processing his situation. He then appreciates Yotsun for saving him, but Yotsun emphasizes that it was someone else that did the saving. According to him, the same person was responsible for saving him too, and that is how he got out of the village. He goes on to speak about the time when he led Masaki into the woods, about some days ago. At that time, he held Masaki by her hand heading to the woods but left her at some point when he saw something that caught his attention. In the present, he says that he saw Nanaki, went into the forest, fell off a cliff, and plunged headfirst into the river. Mitsumune, upon hearing the term Nanaki, recalls what was written in the stone slab he found on his way to the village beside Nanaki Village. Out of curiosity, he questions Yotsun about the term, and then he replies saying that it is the monster from his past. At first, Mitsumune does not process this well, but Yatsen tells him that his savior told him everything. Yatsen leads the way to a strange house where his savior lives. Mitsumune enters the house and sees an old man named Kamiyama who looks in his late 80s. Kamiyama introduces himself to Mitsumune and hands him his business card. Mitsumune quickly finds out that he is the one responsible for saving him and then appreciates him for doing so. Kamiyama speaks about Nanaki Village, starting with the fact that he has experienced the village himself. Around the room are documents and files containing information Kamiyama researched on Nanaki Village. Mitsumune, seeing that Nanaki Village has been under investigation for a long time now, looks shocked because never thought so. On the other hand, he reveals that he wants to go back to Nanaki Village because the people there were acting strange before he left. Before he rounds up his statement, Kamiyama gets closer to him and takes a good look at his eyes. From his observation, he states that Mitsumune's psychological scar is barely visible, but it's still there. Elsewhere, Hayato charges through the woods of Nanaki Village, pissed about the fact that Mitsumune no longer wants to listen to him. On the way, Valkana runs to him asking him if he has seen Mitsumune, but he replies by saying that he might have gone after Masaki. Valakan looks restless at the time as he believes that finding Masaki is key to ending the monsters in the village. At the same time, Reiji charges through the woods with Lion, Mai Mai, and Nanko following him from behind. Mai Mai is still pissed at Reiji and states that he does not have to see her off. On the way, Lion speaks softly to Nanko, telling her that something about Reiji seems off. When asked if it relates to her powers, she replies saying no. Immediately, Nanko believes her, making her look surprised. This makes her recall a time when one of her clients got mad at her because she gave inaccurate information. At that time, she was called a fraud, but her mother did not see her that way. Soon they all arrive close to Nanaki Village, where Reiji makes some comments that catch everyone's attention. What he says makes Nanko realize that he can see other people's Nanaki. Reiji also speaks of the term Nanaki and explains the concept to them, adding that the village got its name from there. He then instructs them to warn Masaki and others that they should leave the village no matter what it takes. Out of curiosity, Nanko insists on knowing his reasons for saying so. He replies by asking a rhetorical question saying, "Do you think it is easy to get rid of a Nanak?" At the same time, Kamiyama speaks about the research he has been doing on Nanaki Village, adding that he specializes in experimental psychology. Mitsumune questions him why he is researching Nanaki Village and replies by saying that he is researching psychological scars. Kamiyama goes on to explain the concept of psychological scars by simply calling it trauma. He reveals that he researched the term with his colleagues up to the point where he came across Nanaki Village, which is a place where psychological scars materialize in Nanaki. According to him, he did not believe the logic behind the village at first, but after interrogating people who came back from the village, he realized that it was true. However, after months of research, he came up with a theory for his superiors, but they all thought he was crazy. Even at that, Kamiyama reveals that he continued his research on the village after his colleagues turned their back on him. The hatred which burned in his heart led him to Nanaki Village, where he experienced it for himself. At that time, he confirmed all he learned about the village, including the part where he met a Nanaki. All of a sudden, he was back in the real world, and that is how he left the village. In the present, he explains that he left because he lost his Nanaki. Elsewhere, Jack lets Hyuketsu into a small cabin, which is their new hideout. There, Jack punches Hyuketsu in the face because he messed up his mission. After punching him, he tells him to smack his face because he messed up too. At first, Hyuketsu seems shocked, but he hits Jack lightly on the face since he is terrified of him. Back at Kamiyama's residence, Mitsumune learns that Kamiyama cut himself off from his Nanaki. He believes that Kamiyama had a good ending since he got out successfully. After looking at a recent picture of the old man, he realizes that he aged significantly within a few years of leaving Nanaki Village. Amid the shock, Kamiyama explains that losing Nanaki means losing oneself. He adds that when he lost his Nanaki, his body started aging rapidly. Meanwhile, Hyuketsu kneels and begs his boss for failing his missing. While begging, Jack smiles from behind, and it turns out that their boss is none other than Koharun. Later that night, the bus driver walks out of the woods to a field where he sees his dead daughter, Misato. There, he touches her skin to see if she is real. After confirming this, he bows down and begs her for forgiveness. In the meantime, Valkana arrives at the base and meets the other tour members lying weak on the ground. He wonders why they are like that and questions the ones he finds awake. Wanko, who is active at the time, explains that the tour members have been behaving weakly for a while. Soy also reveals that the tour members are not sick, because their heart rate and temperature are still normal. Just as she heads out to check on the others, Mai Mai arrives with Lion and Nanko, bearing news from Reiji. According to her, Staying in Nanaki Village will mess up. She then goes on to reveal what Reiji told her, including the part where they will stop functioning as normal human beings if they lose their Nanaki. After receiving this info, the sleepy tour members do not react as expected. Rather, they make jokes about the info, signifying that they are cool with what comes next. However, the exception is Valkana, who yells at them, because he is not comfortable with the fact that his comrades pay less attention to what Mai said. Along the line, a bunch of flame arrows hit different spots on the building, causing Valkana and the others to panic. The persons responsible for the arrows are Jack and Hyuketsu, acting under Koharun's wishes. Even as flame arrows enter the building, the sleepy tour members do not panic. Rather, Jigoku affirms that the arrows are not lethal. The case is different for Valkana because he charges up a different building to find Jack and Hyuketsu. Lion, Mai, and Nanko follow him from behind. When they all get upstairs, Jack snakes up on Lion and restrains her, holding a dagger to her face. The same thing goes for Mai, as Hyuketsu holds a dagger pointing at her face. Valkana witnesses this and warns both criminals to let the ladies go, but they refuse. A brief conversation begins where Hyuketsu speaks about his boss but does not reveal her identity. The fact that Hyuketsu addresses his boss as feminine makes Valkana realize that she is female. In the meantime, Hayato walks through a reverie wishing that Mitsumune did not run off with Masaki. While swimming in his thoughts, Koharun arrives at the scene and calls his attention. There, they both enter into a conversation where Koharun reveals that she came to the village because she wants to do something for someone she cares about. This info shocks Hayato, because he thought Koharun came to the village to start a new life. Back at Lion's position, Hyuketsu reveals the identity of his boss, and this info leaves Valkana shocked. On the other hand, Lion wonders why Koharun led them to the village, even though she knew that their Nanaki would materialize. Nanko thinks deeply about Koharun's objectives and tries to ascertain her reasons for coming to the village. Jack breaks the silence, saying that Koharun intends to make an even stronger Nanaki. Elsewhere, at the riverside, Koharun begins to mess with Hayato's mind, saying things about Mitsumune and Masaki which will trigger his emotions. It gets to a point where Hayato kneels and begs her to stop talking about Masaki. While Hayato drowns in hatred, Koharun takes note of the fact that his Nanaki is growing bigger. At the same time, Kamiyama drives Mitsumune and Yotsun, heading back to Nanaki Village. On the way, he emphasizes that the timing and weather conditions suit the requirements necessary to enter Nanaki Village. He also adds that he lived close to the village because he wanted to stop people from entering the village when those conditions were met. The only thing is that he fell asleep for some reason the night Mitsumune and his other comrades made it into the village. While on the way to the village, Mitsumune takes note of the fact that Yotsun has not aged even after leaving the village. In his defense, he replies by saying that he took his Nanaki with him. Some days ago, when Mitsumune saw Yotsun's body floating on a river, Yotsun saw his Nanaki. When he got to the bottom of the river, he became one with his Nanaki at the point of death. In the present, Yotsun reveals that he realized what he wanted to do with his life after his experience in the river. Kamiyama adds that Yotsun was able to leave the village because he accepted his Nanaki. He also adds that he aged quickly because he abandoned his Nanaki in the village. Also, for this reason, he is unable to feel emotions like hate and anger. He only understands them as concepts in as much as they feel very distant. Soon, they all arrive close to Nanaki Village, but Mitsumune has issues seeing the village because he somehow managed to resolve his mental hang-ups. In the meantime, the bus driver spends time with his daughter, speaking to her about the rumor about Nanaki Village. At some point, he begins to cry while hugging Misato because he now accepts the truth that she is gone. Also, he vows to never forget Misato again, even if it would mean hurting his feelings. In the end, Reiji appears and tells the bus driver that he has accepted his Nanaki. It looks as if he has something planned because he seeks a favor from the bus driver before leaving. Elsewhere, the bus driver speeds to the entrance of Nanaki Village, where Mitsumune and Yotsun are. There, Mitsumune gets into the bus where he sees Misato in the flesh. Misato speaks about Reiji addressing him as a Nanki, and this leaves Mitsumune shocked. Shortly after that, Misato assures her father that she loves him and then becomes one with him. As she disappears, the bus driver informs Mitsumune that Reiji wants him in Nanaki Village. He also adds that Reiji intends for Mitsumune to save Masaki on his behalf. In Reiji's exact words, he said, "I'm Masaki's Nanaki." When the bus driver reveals this to Mitsumune, he looks speechless because now it is confirmed that Reiji is Masaki's Nanaki. At some point, he weeps because Misato has no idea that Reiji is her Nanaki even as she carves to see him badly. While he sheds tears, the bus driver kickstarts the bus heading for Nanaki Village. However, Yotsu is stuck on the bus with Mitsumune, even as he does not want to go to the village. Later that night, Masaki walks by the woods, endlessly looking for Reiji. It gets to a point where she falls to the ground and she tears because she can't find Reiji. While lying on the ground, Mikage and Lovapo arrive at the scene and try to restrain her. Mikage grabs hold of her hair and pulls her backwards, calling her a witch. As usual, bloodthirsty Lovepon suggests that she be executed, but Masaki manages to free herself from their grip when he hears this. While running for her life, Lovepon and Mikage catch up with her again, but this time she yells Mitsumuni's name. Instantly, the bus appears from nowhere, and Mitsumune comes out of the driver's seat. He meets Masaki and the others there, but a large Nanaki catches their attention. Mitsumune, Lovepon, and the others freak out when they find out that they can see the same Nanaki. The person behind the Nanaki is Hayato, who reveals himself shortly after the Nanaki's appearance. Upon seeing Mitsumune, he fumes upset because he is with Masaki. Also, what shocks Mitsumune and the others the most is the fact that Hayato can control his Nanaki. As soon as he gets on top of his Nanaki, he orders it to attack and kill Mitsumune and the others. Instantly, Mitsumune grabs Masaki by her hand and makes a run for their lives. Hayato, who witnesses this, becomes more upset because Mitsumune is still concerned about Masaki. His Nanaki charges at him with the intent to crush him following Hayato's wishes, but Mitsumune manages to stay ahead. At some point, Hayato's Nanaki captures and restrains Mitsumune and Masaki. While in midair, Mitsumune sees his Nanaki trapped in a cage on Hayato's Nanaki. When Masaki sees this, she realizes that Hayato only wants to keep Mitsumune to himself. Mitsumune reads the situation and realizes why Hayato chose to treat him the way he does. One of the reasons is that he is weak, and because of that, Hayato took advantage of it. In the present, Mitsumune manages to talk Hayato out of his rage. He manages to do this by telling him that he also wants to be there for him. At this point, the Nanaki seizes all attacks and remains still while Hayato pays attention to Mitsumune's words. Soon he calms down and the Nanaki falls crumbling to the ground. Immediately after that, Koharun arrives on the scene telling Hayato that he should not listen to Mitsumune. She tries to play the manipulative trick on Hayato like she did before. She succeeds in raining down negative emotions on Hayato, which in turn awakens his Nanaki. The Nanaki attacks Hayato, but Mitsumune carries him on his back to save him from dying. Masaki also supports from behind to reduce the tension on Mitsumune's back. While they all run for their lives, Koharun stays back and picks up a walkie-talkie from the ground. On the other side of the device is Kamiyama, who seems shocked when he realizes that it is Koharun he is speaking to. Immediately, he realizes that she was the one who caused him to fall asleep on the night she made it into the village with the others. Koharun's reason for doing so is that she wants to prevent Kamiyama from aging. Also, another shocking thing is that she addresses Kamiyama as her father during their conversation. The conversation with her dad goes on to a point where she weeps because she has not found her father's Nanaki. At this point, Reiji arrives at the scene and realizes why she experimented with Hayato. Minutes later, Kamiyama gets off the phone when he tells his daughter to allow him to be free. In anger, Koharun throws the device away because all her actions are for naught. Reiji then vanishes in plain sight after admitting that he is a Nanaki too. Elsewhere, Mikage, Mitsumune, Hayato, and the others charge into the tunnel thinking that the Nanaki will not follow them there. While in the tunnel, Mitsumune falls to the ground because of Hayato's weight. Despite the Nanaki's size, it manages to creep into the tunnel heading for Mitsumune and the others. At this point, Hayato volunteers to protect Mitsumune and the others present from his Nanaki. It looks impossible at first, but because Mitsumune protected him, he summons the courage to face his Nanaki. When they both make contact, they both vanish in plain sight instantly, leaving Mikage in shock. Reiji appears and explains that Hayato vanished because he became one with his Nanaki. His voice attracts Masaki's attention because she has missed him so much. After that, she hugs him, but Reiji kills the mood by telling her the truth. Sometime in the past, when Masaki was little, she badly wanted a friend who would stay by her side, laugh with her, and also protect her. For these reasons, she formed an imaginary friend, Reiji, to fit her desires. Reiji listened to her worries and problems no matter the time or place. They grew up together with Reiji solving the problem of loneliness in Masaki's life. In the present, while Reiji narrates this story, Masaki yells at him telling him to stop. The fact that Reiji is Masaki's Nanaki does not sit well with her, and because of that, she weeps and runs away. After she leaves, Reiji begs Mitsumune to go after her while he tells the other tour members about Nanaki Village. He also adds that Mitsumune should take care of Masaki on his behalf. Minutes later, Mitsumune charges out of the tunnel looking for Masaki. On the way, he recalls a time when he used to chase after his brother when they were kids. At some point, Masaki stops running, and Mitsumune catches up to her. What interests her at the time is Mitsumuni's new Nanaki, which looks cute as compared to the previous one. Elsewhere, Reiji arrives at Nanaki Village and informs the other tour members about what is going on. Mikage has no other choice but to believe what he says, because no evidence says otherwise. Moments later, Valkana, Lion, and Nanko arrive at the scene with Jack and Hyuketsu restrained in ropes. For some reason, Jack seems relaxed, unlike Hyuketsu who acts uncomfortable. Jack's composure stems from the fact that he wishes to stay in Nanaki Village instead of going back to his normal life. Reiji, who is present at the time, advises him to consult his Nanaki. They all hear a loud voice coming from the woods, but Reiji assures them that the Nanaki will not attack. He explains that the Nanaki will only attack them if they try to leave the village. This is because a Nanaki is half of oneself and will not want to be left behind. After Mai listens to this explanation from Reiji, she begins to think of Nanakis from a different perspective. Elsewhere, Mitsumune converses with Masaki about the Nanaki, Reiji. Based on what Masaki says, she knows that Reiji is not real, but does not want to accept the truth. In the past, when she tries to feel Reiji's face, her hands will pass through his skin. At that time, she wanted to know how she could meet Reiji in person and the flesh. For that reason, she ended up carrying out research and then came across Nanaki Village, a place where one's psychological scars take form and appear. In the present, Masaki states that she thought she could meet Reiji by coming to Nanaki Village. After Masaki is done talking, Mitsumune tells her that Reiji wants her off the village. He also asks Masaki if there is anything she would like to tell him. Although he might not have the right words to say, he vows to listen to Masaki regardless. Early at dawn, Reiji smiles weirdly and vanishes from Valkana's side. Masaki, on the other hand, feels him within her heart and informs Mitsumune. At this time, she holds Mitsumune's Nanaki and hands it to him before vanishing. Back in Nanaki Village, Mai becomes curious and wonders why Reiji vanished. Lion, being the sensitive type, replies by saying that Masaki made it off the village. Other tour members reveal that they want to remain in the village since they do not want to go back to their former lives. Some others think otherwise, and this causes a little argument between both sides. Amid that, Koharu arrives, offering to help the others with their problems. Her presence triggers Valkana, but he calms down after she states that she will find a way to prevent the tour members from losing their identity. The fact that she intends to stay back in the village lightens Jack and Hyuketsu's spirits because they do not want to be left behind. Mai, who witnesses all that goes on, opposes Koharu, because all that she says sounds too good to be true. Her reason is that Koharu is behind the recent attacks. Valkana confronts Koharu to make sure that he does not have something else planned for them. On the other hand, Koharu in turn assures him that she wants to make up for the bad things that she did recently. The way she says this shows that she feels bad for what she did in the past. This alone makes the other tour members in doubt of their status agree to stay back in the village.